A 10-year anniversary. A 5-star restaurant with a year-long waiting list. A 3-carat diamond glittering on her finger. And their first child, a miracle baby growing safely inside her. From the outside, Amelia Hayes had it all. The perfect husband, the perfect home, the perfect life about to begin. She was wrong, because tonight her husband wouldn't be toasting to her or to their shared decade or to the baby they both desperately wanted. He was about to raise his crystal glass and make a toast so catastrophic, so utterly soul-destroying, that it would burn their perfect world to the ground. And she was ready to serve him the ashes for dessert. The air in Cressida was thick with the scent of money and truffles. It was the kind of place where conversations were murmured, laughter was tastefully subdued, and the clinking of silverware against porcelain was a delicate symphony. For their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus Thorne had, as usual, spared no expense. He'd called in a favor with the owner, a man he played golf with, to secure the coveted corner booth, the one with the panoramic view of the city skyline, a glittering tapestry of 1,000 other lives unfolding in the twilight. Amelia Hayes, 7 months pregnant, and feeling more like a beached whale than the radiant mother-to-be. Everyone said she was smoothed down the silk of her emerald green dress. The color was meant to bring out her eyes, Marcus had said, when he'd gifted it to her that afternoon. He'd also given her a new tennis bracelet diamonds, winking under the restaurant's artfully dim lighting. It was beautiful. It was expensive. It felt as cold as ice against her skin. "Happy anniversary, my love." Marcus said, his voice as smooth as the aged scotch in his glass. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. His touch, which once sent shivers of delight down her spine, now felt like a brand. A decade. Can you believe it? A whole decade since you made me the happiest man on earth. Amelia forced a smile. It was a brittle thing, a carefully constructed mask she had been perfecting for the last 3 months, 2 weeks and 4 days. It's flown by Marcus. She knew exactly how long it had been. She was an architect, after all. Precision was her trade. She built worlds from blueprints, ensuring every line, every measurement, every stress point was accounted for. And for the last 3 months, she had been conducting a forensic analysis of the ruins of her own marriage. It hadn't been one single cataclysmic discovery. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. It started with the scent of a perfume that wasn't hers, clinging to his suit jackets, a cloyingly sweet gardenia scent. Then came the late-night board meetings that coincided with charges for Ubers that ended nowhere near his downtown office, but in a trendy residential part of the city she'd never known him to frequent. Marcus was a creature of habit and luxury. He loathed Uber with a passion, preferring his chauffeured town car. He detested gardenias, claiming they gave him a headache. These were tiny inconsistencies, threads, sticking out from the tapestry of their life. So she pulled. The real evidence, the smoking gun, came from his American Express statement, the one he thought she never looked at. He was meticulous about his business expenses, but sloppy with his personal slush fund. Tucked between charges for his tailor and his monthly subscription to a vintage watch club was a recurring charge for a boutique hotel called the Seraphine. Not for a room, but for cocktails and dining, every Tuesday. For months. But the final soul-crushing blow was a charge from Cartier, a significant charge. She remembered the day. He'd claimed to be stuck in a merger negotiation that went until midnight. He'd come home smelling of exhaustion and that gardenia perfume. The charge was for a love locket, small model, rose gold. She had searched every inch of their sprawling minimalist home. She'd checked her jewelry box, his closets, even the gift-wrapping station in their study. The locket was not for her. Her best friend, Isabella Rossi. Izzy, a divorce attorney with the heart of a pit bull and the loyalty of a saint, had been her rock. "Are you sure, Ames?" she'd asked, her voice laced with a dangerous calm, when Amelia finally broke down and told her everything. Amelia had just nodded, sliding the printed-out bank statements across Izzy's glass desk. "The locket was the end of the blueprint, Izzy. The whole structure is compromised. It's a tear-down." Izzy's eyes, usually sparkling with mirth, had hardened into chips of obsidian. "Okay, a tear-down it is. But we're not just demolishing it, Amelia. We're going to salvage every last valuable piece for you and that baby, and we're going to make him pay for the wrecking ball." Over the next few weeks, they had planned. Izzy handled the legal machinery with terrifying efficiency, filing petitions, preparing injunctions to freeze their joint assets, drafting custody papers that would give Amelia sole physical and legal custody. Amelia's job was to play the part of the happy, expectant wife. She had to let Marcus believe his world was secure, his secrets safe. It was the most difficult role of her life, a brutal piece of performance art played out in their shared bed and over their morning coffee. Every time he placed a hand on her swollen belly and spoke to their son, they had decided to name him Oliver. A piece of her withered and died. "Hey, Ollie," he'd murmur, his voice thick with what she now knew was counterfeit emotion. "Daddy can't wait to meet you. We're going to have the best life, you and me and your beautiful mum." Tonight was the final act. "To us," Marcus said, now raising his glass again, his eyes a shade of blue that had once reminded her of a summer's sky, now seemed murky, shallow. "To the next 10 years. And to our son, to Oliver. May he have his mother's beauty and, well, my business sense, I suppose." He chuckled, a self-satisfied sound that grated on Amelia's raw nerves. Amelia raised her water glass, the crystal cool against her trembling fingers. "To us," she echoed, her voice a hollow whisper. She took a sip, the water tasting like ash in her mouth. She could feel the weight of the thick, cream-colored envelope in her handbag. It felt heavier than the entire world. The waiter arrived to take their order. Marcus, ever the connoisseur, discussed the merits of the seared scallops versus the foie gras terrine with an intensity he hadn't shown her in years. He ordered for both of them, choosing her favorite sea bass, a detail that was meant to show he was still attentive, still her Marcus. It was a pathetic, transparent gesture. As they ate the first course, Marcus prattled on about a deal he was closing. A big one. A legacy maker, he called it. He was a partner at a high-flying private equity firm, Thorne & Sterling, a company founded by his formidable father, Sterling Thorne. Marcus had always lived in his father's shadow, desperate for his approval. This deal, he explained, would finally cement his own reputation. "Dad is... well, he's watching this one closely," Marcus said, a flicker of anxiety crossing his face, before being replaced by his usual cocksure grin. "But it's in the bag. By the time Oliver is born, we'll be more secure than ever. I'm building an empire for him, Amelia. For us. You're building it on a foundation of lies," she thought, taking a small, precise bite of her scallop. "And a foundation like that is designed to crumble." She let him talk, nodding and smiling at all the right moments. She was an observer now, a spectator at the demolition of her own life. She studied his face, the handsome, familiar lines and planes. How could a person look so much like the man she had married, yet be a complete and utter stranger? The love she'd felt for him had curdled into something else, something cold and hard and heavy. It wasn't just anger. It was a profound, bottomless disappointment. He hadn't just broken her heart. He had invalidated their entire history, turning their shared memories into a collection of lies. The main course arrived. The sea bass was cooked to perfection, its skin crispy, its flesh flaky. Amelia pushed it around her plate. Her appetite had vanished weeks ago. Every bite of food felt like a betrayal to the baby, nestled under her heart, forcing him to be nourished by a body racked with silent grief and simmering rage. "You're quiet tonight," Marcus observed, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. "Everything okay, my love? Is the baby kicking?" "He's quiet too," Amelia said, her voice even. "Maybe he's just enjoying the view." She looked out the window at the city lights, feeling 1,000,000 miles away from the man sitting opposite her. "Good boy," Marcus said with a laugh, completely oblivious. He refilled his wine glass, the third of the evening. He was getting comfortable arrogant. The alcohol was loosening his tongue, eroding the already flimsy walls of his secret world. The waiter cleared their plates and offered the dessert menu. No dessert menu for us," Marcus said, waving him away with a magnanimous gesture. "Just bring 2 glasses of your best champagne. I have one more toast to make. The most important one." The waiter bowed and retreated. A knot of ice formed in Amelia's stomach. This was it. The grand finale. She slipped her hand into her purse, her fingers brushing against the crisp edge of the envelope. The champagne arrived in tall, elegant flutes, the bubbles rising in a frantic, celebratory dance. Marcus beamed, his face flushed with wine and self-satisfaction. He looked every bit the successful man celebrating a milestone, the bespoke suit, the Patek Philippe watch peeking from his cuff, the confident posture. He was a portrait of deceit. He picked up his glass, holding it aloft. The diamond on Amelia's wrist caught the light, refracting it into 1,000 tiny, painful shards. "Amelia," he began, his voice taking on a formal, performative tone. "10 years ago, I was just a man with ambition. You gave that ambition a purpose. You gave me a home, a life. You've been my anchor, my partner in every sense of the word." He paused, looking directly at her. Amelia met his gaze, her expression a carefully neutral mask. She refused to give him the satisfaction of tears or anger. Not yet. She would let him build his gallows. She would let him tie his own noose. And this year, he continued, his voice softening. "This year has been the most transformative yet. We've faced challenges, we've had our distance. Work has been consuming." He was laying the groundwork for his narrative, the story of a busy, important man who might have been a little neglectful, but whose heart was in the right place. It was pathetic. But through it all there has been a light, a guiding star that reminded me what truly matters. Passion, understanding, a connection that feels effortless. Someone who sees me, not the title, not the name, but the man underneath. Someone who makes me feel alive. Amelia's blood ran cold. He wasn't talking about her. Every word was a dagger, twisting deeper into a wound she hadn't even known was there. He wasn't just having an affair. He thought he was in love. The sheer audacity of it, the gall to say these words to her face on their anniversary while she carried his child, was breathtaking. He smiled, a strange, almost wistful expression on his face. He seemed to have forgotten she was even there, lost in a reverie of his own making. The wine, the ego, the pressure of his double life, it was all converging into this one monumentally stupid moment. "It's about embracing a new chapter." He went on his speech, becoming slightly slurred, more heartfelt, more genuine than anything he'd said to her all evening, about having the courage to pursue true happiness no matter the obstacles. It's about a love that is fierce and brave and doesn't ask for anything, but gives everything. It's everything. He raised his glass higher, his eyes shining with unshed maudlin tears. The restaurant's gentle hum seemed to fade into nothingness. The world narrowed to the space between them, a chasm of betrayal. And then he delivered the final fatal blow. The words tumbled out, a Freudian slip of epic proportions, a public confession masked as a tribute. "So I'd like to make a toast," he declared, his voice ringing with a conviction that chilled her to the bone. To a future filled with that kind of light and passion. To my one true partner. To Lily. The name hung in the air between them. Lily. It wasn't a mumble. It wasn't a mistake he tried to catch. He said it with clarity and reverence. He had toasted his mistress at their 10th anniversary dinner. For a split second, the universe seemed to stop. The clinking of distant forks, the murmur of conversations, the soft music, it all ceased. There was only the name echoing in the cavernous silence of Amelia's shattered heart. Marcus's smile faltered. The drunken romantic haze in his eyes began to clear, replaced by a dawning, sickening horror. He stared at Amelia, his mouth slightly agape, the color draining from his face. He had heard himself say it. He knew what he had done. The silence stretched, taut, and agonizing. He started to lower his glass, his hand trembling so violently that champagne sloshed over the rim, spilling onto the pristine white tablecloth like a teardrop. Amelia didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She didn't scream, though a primal scream was clawing its way up her throat. Instead, a preternatural calm settled over her. It was the calm of a building being condemned, the quiet stillness before the controlled demolition. She had her blueprint. She knew exactly what came next. She watched him, her eyes as cold and clear as the diamonds on her wrist. She watched the panic flare in his eyes, the frantic search for an excuse, a way to rewind time by 10 seconds. She watched the man she had loved, the father of her child, crumble before her very eyes. Lily Amelia repeated her voice, low and steady. It cut through the silence with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. What a lovely name. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. A strangled gasp, a wet, pathetic noise was all he could manage. "Amelia, that's not, I meant—" "Don't," she said, holding up a hand. The gesture was small, but it carried an authority that stopped him cold. "Don't you dare try to lie your way out of this. Not now. Not after that." She let the silence sit for another long, excruciating moment, forcing him to stew in the toxic mess he had created. She wanted him to feel the full weight of his public, irrevocable mistake. Finally, she reached into her handbag. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She pulled out the thick, cream-colored envelope. It was from the desk of Isabella Rossi, attorney at law. She placed it on the table between them, sliding it across the polished wood until it came to rest next to his trembling hand. Marcus stared at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. His name and their home address were typed neatly on the front. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. Amelia leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his. The mask was gone. All he could see now was the ice. "You ordered champagne for a toast," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "I, however, planned for dessert." She gave a slight nod toward the envelope. "Happy anniversary, Marcus. You've just been served." Marcus stared at the envelope. His mind, usually sharp and quick, seemed to have short-circuited. The words, "You've just been served," echoed in his ears, nonsensical at first, then crashing down on him with the force of a physical blow. "Served," he repeated stupidly, his gaze flicking from the envelope to Amelia's impassive face. "What are you talking about, Amelia? This is a joke, right?" "A sick joke because of what I just— That was a mistake. A slip of the tongue. I'm exhausted. The deal." "Stop talking," Marcus Amelia commanded. Her voice was flat, final. For once in your life, just stop talking and listen. With a hand that was surprisingly steady, she picked up her water glass and took a long, slow sip. She was in control. The power dynamic in their relationship, which had been so skewed in his favor for so long, had just shifted on its axis with the force of an earthquake. "Open it," she said. He hesitated, his breathing shallow. He looked around the restaurant, suddenly paranoid. Had anyone heard, the couple at the next table were engrossed in their own world. The waiter was hovering at a discreet distance. No one seemed to have noticed the implosion of the Thorne marriage, at least not yet. With fumbling fingers, he tore open the envelope. His arrogance, his suave confidence had evaporated, leaving behind a raw, desperate panic. He pulled out the sheaf of papers. The top page was emblazoned with the crest of the state court. Petition for dissolution of marriage. His eyes scanned the words, his brain struggling to process them. Irreconcilable differences. The phrase seemed laughably inadequate. Below it was a second document. Emergency petition for exclusive use of marital home, and a third, motion to freeze all marital assets, joint and separate. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief and fury. "Freeze my assets. My assets? Are you insane?" The sterling deal. "Amelia, this could ruin me. This could destroy the firm. It seems you should have thought of that before you started financing a second life with our money," Amelia said coolly. She was enjoying this, she realized, with a distant sense of shock. Not the pain, but the reclaiming of her power. The execution of a perfect, devastating plan. He frantically shuffled through the pages. Behind the legal petitions were the exhibits. Izzy had called them the kill shots. Exhibit A, a year's worth of credit card statements with the charges for the Seraphine Hotel and the Cartier locket highlighted in vicious yellow. Exhibit B, printed Uber receipts, showing the pickup from his office and the drop-off at a luxury apartment building in the West Village, an address that was not their home. Exhibit CA, printout from the Cartier website, showing the exact love locket, small model, rose gold he had purchased. And finally, Exhibit D, the one that made Marcus's blood turn to ice water. It was a single crystal-clear photograph, a candid shot of him and a stunning, dark-haired young woman laughing as they left the Seraphine just last week. He had his arm around her, and gleaming against her collarbone was the delicate, unmistakable rose gold of the Cartier locket. How did you—" He stammered, the papers trembling in his hand. "You're a creature of habit, Marcus." Amelia said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Your patterns are predictable. Your arrogance made you sloppy. You hired a private investigator without even knowing it." "Me." He slumped back in the booth, defeated. The fight went out of him, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated terror. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time that night. The woman across from him was not the gentle, accommodating wife he had taken for granted. This was a stranger, a woman with eyes of steel and a heart encased in ice. "Amelia, please," he begged, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. He reached for her hand. She pulled it away, as if his touch were poison. "We can talk about this. We can fix this. Think about Oliver. Think about our son." The mention of their child's name was a match to a gasoline-soaked rage she had kept banked for months. Her calm exterior finally cracked. "I am thinking of him," she hissed, leaning forward, her voice a venomous whisper that was for his ears alone. "I am thinking about how I will not raise my son in a house of lies. I will not teach him that this is what a marriage looks like. I will not let him have a father who is a coward, a cheat, and a fool who is so pathetic he toasts his mistress by name in front of his pregnant wife on their anniversary." Every word was a perfectly aimed blow. He visibly flinched. You didn't just cheat on me, Marcus. You desecrated everything. Our home, our vows, our past, our future. This baby. Her voice broke for a second, and she placed a protective hand on her stomach. This baby was supposed to be our miracle, and you turned him into collateral damage in your sordid little affair. She stood up, her movements fluid and graceful. She was done. The final scene of her old life was over. She looked down at him, a broken man sitting amidst the wreckage of a $10,000 dinner and a 10-year marriage. The locks on the house will be changed by morning, she said, her voice regaining its composure. A courier will be at your office with a copy of the temporary restraining order. You are to stay 500 feet away from me and the house. Your personal effects have been packed. They are at your father's house. His head shot up at the mention of his father. My father. You told my father the terror in his eyes was now absolute. Izzy had a professional courtesy call with his lawyer an hour ago, Amelia said, to inform him of the asset freeze. I imagine you'll be hearing from him shortly. She had saved the worst for last. Marcus's affair was a personal failing, but jeopardizing the firm, bringing public scandal to the Thorne and Sterling name, that was a sin his father, Sterling Thorne, would never forgive. She had not only dismantled his marriage, she had detonated his entire professional life and his relationship with the one man whose approval he craved above all else. Without another word, Amelia turned and walked away. She didn't look back. She walked through the hushed restaurant, her head held high, the emerald silk of her dress flowing behind her. She could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her, but she didn't care. She was the architect of her own life again, and she had just laid the foundation stone for a new one. She stepped out into the cool night air, leaving Marcus Thorne alone in the corner booth with a glass of celebratory champagne, a bill he could no longer pay, and the smouldering ruins of his entire world. The crisp night air felt like a slap, shocking Amelia out of the refrigerated calm of the restaurant and into the dizzying reality of what she had just done. The drive to Izzy's apartment was a surreal journey through a city that was suddenly alien. The familiar skyline, a panorama of glittering lights that had been the backdrop to her execution, now seemed to mock her. Each illuminated window, a tiny world that was still intact, unlike her own. She didn't cry. The emotional shock had formed a kind of armor around her, a brittle shell of numbness that kept the howling grief at bay. She was aware of the hum of the tires on the pavement, the weight of her own body in the leather seat, and the phantom sensation of the heavy envelope, now gone from her purse, but forever imprinted on her memory. When she finally stepped into the warmth of Izzy's apartment, the carefully constructed shell began to fracture. Izzy, foregoing words, simply opened her arms. The embrace was fierce and grounding, and it was only then that Amelia's body began to tremble, a violent, uncontrollable shuddering, as the adrenaline began its slow, painful retreat. "It's done," Amelia whispered, her voice a raw, unused thing. "I did it, Iz. I know. I got the call," Izzy said, guiding her to a deep, comfortable sofa and wrapping a cashmere throw around her shoulders. Sterling's lead counsel. A man who sounds like he chews gravel for breakfast. He didn't say much, just, "The package has been delivered, and the target is apocalyptic." His words. "You're a warrior, Ames." Amelia shook her head, sinking into the cushions. The emptiness she'd felt at the restaurant was now flooding every part of her. "I feel hollow. I feel like I just pressed the button on a demolition, and I was still inside the building." "You weren't inside?" Izzy corrected her voice, a low, intense counterpoint to Amelia's despair. She knelt before her, taking her cold hands. "You were in a helicopter, watching from a safe distance as a condemned structure that he set on fire finally came down. There is a world of difference. Izzy's focus shifted from friend to lawyer. Tell me everything, word for word. I want to hear it. Amelia recounted the evening in a flat monotone, the stilted conversation, the expensive wine, Marcus's self-congratulatory monologue. And then the toast. As she repeated the name, Lily, a fresh wave of nausea rolled through her. He looked. Lost in a dream is. He wasn't talking to me. He was performing a love sonnet for her, and I just happened to be the audience. The arrogance, the sheer breathtaking stupidity of it. It's the classic narcissist's mistake. Izzy analyzed her eyes hard. They build their worlds with such elaborate lies that they start to believe them. The lines blur. In his wine-soaked, egotistical brain, that toast made perfect sense. He is the hero of his own story, and we are all just supporting characters. She squeezed Amelia's hand, but the supporting character just rewrote the ending. Now you rest. I'll handle the rest of the explosions tonight. While Amelia was being wrapped in the safety of friendship, Marcus remained in the gilded cage of Cressida. He was a statue in a bespoke suit. The divorce papers lay on the table like a death certificate. His mind, usually a high-speed engine of deals and strategies, was a sputtering, stalling wreck. He kept replaying the last 10 minutes, the sequence of events, seeming both impossible and horrifyingly real. The name leaving his lips, the look in Amelia's eyes not of heartbreak, but of cold, crystalline fury, an expression he had never seen before. The envelope. You've just been served. The words finally broke through his denial. This wasn't a spontaneous, angry outburst from her. This was premeditated, calculated. The highlighted bank statements, the photograph, the legal petitions, this was weeks, maybe months of planning. He hadn't just been caught. He had been hunted. The woman he'd dismissed as a gentle, accommodating homemaker had just performed a corporate-level, hostile takeover of his life. The waiter, a young man with terrified eyes, approached the table. "Sir, the bill." He placed the leather folder on the table and retreated as if it were radioactive. Marcus stared at it. The amount was just a number, usually meaningless. Tonight it was a symbol of his impotence. Motion to freeze all marital assets. He pulled out his wallet, his fingers fumbling for the black card that had always been his key to the world. For the first time in his adult life, he felt a sickening lurch of fear that it would be declined. His phone began to vibrate, a frantic, insistent buzzing against the polished wood. The screen lit up with a name that turned his blood to ice, Sterling Thorne. He watched it ring the sound, an alarm bell signaling his own execution. He couldn't answer. He couldn't not answer. On the fourth vibration, his hand moved of its own accord. "Father," he croaked. The voice that answered was not the booming roar he expected. It was something far more terrifying, a controlled Arctic calm that promised utter destruction. "Marcus, I have just concluded a call with my lead counsel, who was in turn contacted by Isabella Rossi. I'm told she is your wife's attorney. A very thorough woman, it seems. Father, I can explain everything. It's a misunderstanding. Amelia is emotional. She's pregnant. Do not insult my intelligence by treating me like a fool." Marcus Sterling's voice sliced through the line. A misunderstanding does not come with a professionally prepared motion to freeze the assets of a senior partner. An emotional outburst does not include photographic evidence and a restraining order. This is the result of prolonged systemic stupidity on a scale I have heretofore believed you incapable of. There was a pause. The stability clause in the Omnicorp deal, Marcus. Do you remember it? It stipulates that any public scandal, financial or personal, involving a key partner, can trigger a re-evaluation. Our investors are skittish by nature. You have just handed our rivals a nuclear bomb and pointed it directly at the head of this firm, my firm. I can fix it. Marcus pleaded desperation, making his voice high and thin. I'll talk to her. I'll make this go away. You will do nothing. Sterling's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Because you are nothing. You are a liability. Your personal effects are being packed by my staff as we speak. They will be waiting for you in the foyer of my house. You are suspended from all duties at Thorne and Sterling, pending a board review that I assure you will not go in your favor. Do not come to the office. Do not contact any of our clients. Do not speak my name. You are a disgrace. The line went dead. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus sat there, the dead phone in his hand, the world collapsing in on him. Wife, job, father, fortune. Gone. All gone. In the wreckage of his mind, a single name surfaced, a last-ditch hope for a life raft. Lily. She loved him. She understood him. She was his future. He dialed her number, his fingers trembling. She answered on the second ring, her voice a warm, sleepy balm on his shredded nerves. Hey, you. I was just dreaming about you. Lily, he gasped, his voice breaking. It's a catastrophe. It's all gone wrong. What is it, baby? Did the deal fall through? Her voice was laced with concern. Worse. Amelia. She knows everything, Lily. She just served me divorce papers in the middle of our anniversary dinner. She froze my accounts. She has pictures of us, the locket, everything. A beat of silence. Then another. It was a different kind of silence than his father's. It was analytical, the sound of a calculation being run. She served you. Lily's voice was suddenly sharp, stripped of all its previous warmth. How did she know? What exactly did you do, Marcus? I don't know, I might have said your name. In a toast. It was a mistake you toasted to me. The disbelief in her voice was quickly replaced by a cold, hard anger. In front of your pregnant wife, are you an idiot? He flinched. Wait. You told me she was using a surrogate. You told me the pregnancy wasn't real between you. You said you two were completely estranged, that your marriage was a business contract for your father. The intricate web of lies he had so carefully woven was now strangling him. It's complicated, Lily, but I love you. No, it's not complicated. She cut him off, her voice like chipping ice. It's very, very simple. You lied to me. You lied about your wife, about your baby, about your marriage. You sold me a prospectus on a future that was based on fraudulent information. She was using the language of her profession, and it terrified him. Let me get this straight. Your wife, who is actually and truly pregnant with your biological child, has just legally castrated you. She's frozen your money, and your father, whose approval you worship, is about to find out you've jeopardized his company for an affair. You are a bad investment, Marcus. You have no capital, no leverage, and your stock is in a free fall. What precisely is your value to me now? I thought you loved me, he whispered, the final vestiges of his world crumbling. A short, bitter laugh came down the line. I was in love with the man you promised you were going to be. The man who was leaving his sham marriage to build an empire with me. That man, it seems, does not exist. The man who does exist is a broke, disowned, soon-to-be father in the middle of a catastrophic divorce. I have a career to think of. My firm does not look kindly on this kind of scandal. Don't call me again. Lose my number. The call ended. He was adrift in a silent, unforgiving ocean. He had lost everything and everyone. 2 days later, Amelia was curled on Izzy's sofa, wrapped in the same cashmere throw, trying to read a book, but mostly just staring into space. She was in a strange limbo, the calm after the storm, but before the long, arduous clean-up. A sharp, decisive knock echoed from the front door. Izzy, coming from the kitchen with a cup of tea, frowned. "I'm not expecting anyone." She opened the door. Standing in the hallway was a woman who radiated a steely, formidable composure. She was wearing a perfectly tailored trench coat, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. But it was the object gleaming at her throat that made Amelia's breath catch in her lungs. A delicate rose-gold Cartier locket. It was Lily. Her expression was not apologetic or gloating. It was the impassive, focused look of a CEO entering a hostile boardroom. "Amelia Hayes," she asked, her voice as crisp and cool as an autumn morning. Her eyes flicked past Izzy and settled on Amelia. There was no pity in them, only a chilling pragmatism. Amelia's hand flew to her belly, a protective, primal instinct. She felt Izzy tense beside her, ready to slam the door. "What do you want?" Amelia managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Lily met her gaze directly. "My name is Lily Renault," she stated, as if announcing herself for a deposition. "I believe you and I have been unwillingly involved in the same disastrous merger. I think we need to talk." The silence Lily Renault left in her wake was more profound than any sound. It was a vacuum filled with the weight of unspoken possibilities and the faint, lingering scent of her expensive, determined perfume. Amelia, Izzy, and the small black USB drive formed a strange trinity in the center of the living room. For a long moment, no one moved. It was Izzy, ever the pragmatist, who broke the spell. She picked up the drive, holding it between her thumb and forefinger, as if it were a rare and volatile jewel. "Well," Izzy said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "I've seen bitter exes and I've seen scorned lovers. But I have never in my entire career seen such a beautifully packaged, professionally executed instrument of mutually assured destruction. This woman isn't just slamming the door on her way out. She's burning the whole building down and salting the earth." Amelia finally let out the breath she'd been holding. It came out as a shaky, almost hysterical laugh. "She called our lives a disastrous merger." "She's not wrong," Izzy conceded, walking over to her laptop on the desk. "But now we're the majority shareholders in his demise." She plugged the drive in her fingers, flying across the keyboard. Files popped up, organized into neat, damning folders. Sterling deal due diligence, internal memos, Q3, creative accounting projections. It was a corporate assassin's toolkit. "What do we do with it?" Amelia asked, her voice quiet. A part of her, the part that still remembered the boy she'd fallen in love with in college, felt a pang of something heavy and sad. This wasn't just revenge. This was obliteration. Izzy leaned back in her chair, her eyes gleaming with strategic fire. "We don't do anything reckless. We don't just leak it to some gossip blog. That's messy. That can be traced. No, we are surgical. I have a contact, a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, a real bloodhound named Peterson, who lives to expose corporate malfeasance. We give it to him. An anonymous tip. He'll be legally protected by his source shield, and he has the resources to verify everything independently. By the time the story breaks, it won't be about Marcus Thorne's affair. It will be about Thorne and Sterling's potential SEC violations. It moves the narrative from the personal to the criminal." Amelia nodded slowly, processing the cold, brilliant logic. "You're turning his greatest pride into his greatest liability." "He did that himself," Izzy corrected gently. We're just turning on the lights so everyone can see the mess he made in the dark." She looked at Amelia, her expression softening. "Ames, are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. This is the point of no return." Amelia thought for a moment. She thought of the cold bracelet on her wrist, the toast to another woman, the lies about her baby. She thought of the future she had meticulously planned, now reduced to rubble. Then she placed a hand on her swollen belly, where a tiny, insistent flutter reminded her of the new future she had to build. The foundation of that future had to be clean. It had to be built on cleared ground. "Do it," she said, her voice clear and firm. "Burn it all down." The fallout was faster and more spectacular than either of them could have imagined. Peterson, the journalist, pursued the story with rabid tenacity. The first article dropped 2 weeks later, a front-page exposé detailing significant financial irregularities in the upcoming Thorne and Sterling mega-deal. It didn't mention Marcus by name at first, but the breadcrumbs were there. An anonymous source, an investigation into a key partner's conduct. The deal his legacy maker collapsed within 48 hours. The investors, spooked by the words SEC investigation, pulled out in a panic. The second article was more direct, naming Marcus Thorne as the partner at the center of the scandal, linking his professional recklessness to a tumultuous and messy divorce. Amelia watched it unfold from the quiet sanctuary of her mother's home, where she'd moved, while the legal proceedings churned on. She saw the headlines on the news, heard the whispers when she dared to venture out for a doctor's appointment. Marcus Thorne was no longer a titan of finance. He was a pariah. Sterling Thorne, in a move of brutal self-preservation, issued a public statement announcing Marcus's permanent removal from the firm and his full cooperation with any and all regulatory bodies. He had been publicly disowned, cast out to save the family name. Amelia's divorce settlement, which Izzy had initially predicted would be a bloody drawn-out war, was suddenly resolved with shocking speed. Marcus, stripped of his resources and his father's backing, capitulated on every single point. Amelia got the house, sole custody of their unborn son, and a financial settlement that would ensure she and Oliver would want for nothing. He kept only his personal effects and a reputation that was now radioactive. The war was over. She had won. But it felt less like a victory and more like the quiet, somber end of a tragedy. 4 months later. The harsh Chicago winter had given way to a tentative spring. Life was pushing through the frozen ground, and Amelia felt a kinship with it. She stood in the middle of a vast, open space, her hand resting on the magnificent curve of her belly. Now, at 8.5 months pregnant, she moved with a slow, deliberate grace, a planet with her own tiny moon orbiting within. The air smelled of sawdust, wet concrete, and the promise of new beginnings. This was her project, her passion. The Westside Hope Center, a pro bono architectural commission for a community hub designed for single mothers and their children. After the divorce was finalized, she had sold the sterile, minimalist mausoleum she had once shared with Marcus. The memories there were tainted, the very walls imbued with deceit. She used a portion of the settlement to help fund this center, a place of light and support, a place whose very bones were honest. She ran a hand over a newly installed support beam, feeling the solid, sturdy grain of the wood. She was building again, and it was healing her. Here she wasn't the scorned wife from the headlines. She was Ms. Hayes, the architect. Her vision was respected, her decisions final. She managed gruff foremen and argued about load-bearing walls and HVAC systems with a confidence that had been steadily growing within her. This work and the life growing inside her had become her entire world. There were hard moments, of course. Attending a prenatal class alone had been a unique form of torture, sitting amidst a sea of beaming, hand-holding couples. Decorating the nursery in her new, smaller home had brought on a wave of grief, so profound it had knocked her off her feet, forcing her to sit on the floor and weep for the family she was supposed to have, for the father who would never read a bedtime story in the rocking chair she had so carefully assembled. But with each tear she felt a little cleaner. With each challenge she met at the construction site, she felt a little stronger. She was no longer defined by Marcus's betrayal, but by her own resilience. Her phone, buzzing from the pocket of her maternity jeans, startled her. She pulled it out, frowning at the unknown number. Probably a supplier with another delay. "This is Amelia Hayes." A pause. Then a voice she hadn't heard in months. A voice that was no longer smooth and confident, but hesitant, frayed around the edges. No, it was Marcus. An invisible wall slammed down inside her. Her hand instinctively tightened on the blueprint she was carrying. "What do you want, Marcus? You're not supposed to be contacting me directly. I know, I'm sorry. The lawyers are done, the papers are signed. This is just me. Not that person. The one from before." He took a shaky, audible breath. She could picture him not in a corner office, but in a small, empty room somewhere. "I've had a lot of time to think." Sitting in silence. There's nowhere to hide from yourself when it's quiet. He paused and she waited, saying nothing, offering him no encouragement. "I needed to say it," he finally continued, his voice cracking with a raw emotion she hadn't heard since they were young and truly in love. "I'm sorry. And I know how pathetic that word sounds. It's not enough. It will never be enough. I'm sorry for the affair, for Lily, for the lies. But it's more than that. I'm sorry for who I became. A weak, selfish man, hiding in his father's shadow, so desperate to feel powerful that he destroyed the only real and good thing in his life. You." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This was the confession she had once screamed for in the dead of night. Hearing it now felt clinical. It was a diagnosis of a disease she had already survived. "I broke everything, Amelia," he whispered, his voice thick with shame. "Our past, our future, our son. My God, our son. He's going to have a father who is a failure and a disgrace. And that's my fault, all of it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just couldn't let my last words to you be a lie over dinner. I had to try just once to tell you the truth." She listened to the silence after he finished, the sound of his ragged breathing on the other end of the line. The anger she had carried for so long, the white-hot rage, had cooled. In its place was a vast, quiet plain of pity and sadness. He wasn't a monster anymore. He was just a broken man. "I heard you, Marcus," she said, her voice softer than she expected. It was an acknowledgement, not an absolution. It was a simple statement of fact. "That's all I can give you." "I know," he whispered. "That's more than I deserve. Be happy, Amelia. You and Oliver. You've earned it." He ended the call. Amelia stood motionless for a full minute, the phone still pressed to her ear. Then she slowly lowered it and slipped it back into her pocket. The final tether to her old life had just been severed. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt final, like closing a very thick, very heavy book. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of creation around her. She looked at the strong, bare bones of the building, a skeleton waiting for her to give it a heart. She looked at the light pouring through the unfinished windows, promising warmth and clarity. She was building a place of refuge for others, and in doing so had built one for herself. She pulled a water bottle from her bag and unscrewed the cap. Holding it up in the dusty sunlit air, she made a silent toast. It wasn't to a man or a memory or a decade of shared history. It was a toast to the empty rocking chair in the nursery that she would fill with love all on her own. It was a toast to the strength she didn't know she had. It was a toast to her son, who would be born into a world built on a foundation of truth and resilience. A toast to the beautiful, imperfect, and magnificent life that was hers and hers alone to design. This time there would be no compromises, no hidden flaws. This time she was the sole architect. And the work was just beginning. Amelia's story is a chilling reminder of how the perfect picture can be a carefully crafted lie, and how betrayal can come from the person you trust the most. It's a journey into the heart of darkness, where love curdles into lies, and a celebratory dinner becomes a courtroom. But it's also a powerful testament to the incredible strength it takes to tear down a life built on deceit in order to build a new one founded on truth and self-worth. She walked through fire, but she didn't just survive. She emerged as the architect of her own destiny, stronger and more resilient than ever before. If her journey from heartbreak to empowerment resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of reclaiming your own story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It truly helps our channel grow. Share this story with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next real-life story. Thank you for listening.